Lake, thank you so much for coming on to Stories in AI. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
It's a true pleasure and a true honor to have you and host you here. And why don't we just directly get in? Why don't you start by telling us your personal story and how you got into AI and venture capitalism and being an educator?
Wow, that's a long story. Take 20 years. um, well, I actually started. I didn't really start at AI. I think AI has been around since the 50s, but many people actually started with just simply software, right? I was fortunate that when I got in the industry of internet, it was in the 90s, late 90s, and then at the time, I think it was just start to boom. A lot of original product like blogs and BBS and communities, and I was very fortunate that I was able to join Alibaba as the global employee number 84. But in Hangzhou back then, we only have 30 people. Work from Jack Ma's house and a very small team. As you probably could imagine, you being an entrepreneur in the past, it's that you would do everything, right? So as head of product back then of Alibaba.com.cn, that we call us producers, so product managers, basically. But producers really had to do all the way from product design, the ideas, the business positioning, but to all the way to coding. Coding, clean up the HTML code and design the website and rolled it out. And not only just the Alibaba days, but later on when I joined Yahoo, I remember my first day at Yahoo. I arrived at the company at 9 a.m. and at 11 a.m. they said, well, we're going to do a production rollout. Why don't you just do that? And I crashed Yahoo site for about 20 minutes.
What an amazing story.
Yeah. So, but anyways, I think it was a truly, it was an honor to be in this company, all these companies very early. I don't think I've shared the story before, is that I was in those companies so early that at the time I had my first name at the company Inc. So I had Lake at appleinc.com. I had Lake at Alibaba Inc. And I had Lake at Yahoo Inc. I
Wow.
don't think they do this today. Uh, and I wish I took my business card and then, it would be very interesting, like Instagram it, keep it as a memory.
That's true.
Um, back to your story. So when I was, moved from Alibaba to Yahoo, and I was head of search, Yahoo Search. As a search product, I would say, search product probably was one of the first ones actually using a tons of algorithm for relevance ranking, right? So we not only just crawl index information, but we also have to spend a lot of time into what are the relevance, what's the relevance scores. There are actually two things. One is that you have to identify the user intent. Today I call it intent mining, right? So you have keywords, you basically try to figure out when user typing the keywords, what are the intended search they want to, what kind of intended search result they want to find. And it was really interesting. So both on explicit search keywords and inexplicit, right? So basically kind of find out that information and then you have to rank the results. So I think that was, if I look back, I think that was probably the first unofficial closing contact with AI or machine learning. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and the question about educator.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
then so that's the interaction with AI, and then you at a few years afterwards left Yahoo, join startups and try to build companies together with my ex Yahoo coworkers. And then as my journey as an entrepreneur continues, and I learned so much, not only just from success, but also from failure. So I got more and more involved with accelerators as not only just mentor, but also angel investor.
Got it.
So yeah, as many of us today are angel investors, and then I think that's a great way to work with companies and build up your knowledge and experience as investor. As my angel investment continue to make pretty good progress, I would say also the timing was right? Because I invested in my first angel investment was right after financial crisis, and that was the best time to bet on companies.
Anything.
Yeah, resilient companies, great founders, great valuation, and some of the companies that I invested in, say around 6 million, 8 million today actually are in the valuation of over 1 billion or, half a billion, one of them is 4 billion. So those are great, I would say, experience that I had that helped me tremendously when I switched to institutional investment 6 years ago.
Awesome.
In terms of teaching, is actually came at the same time. I actually grew up in a university. So my grandfather was president of one of the leading engineering schools in China. So many of my relatives, are and were professors back then, and it always never crossed my mind I would not be teaching one day. But today, I think how university created all the adjunct positions really allow me to be really enjoy the journey in industry, but also academian environment. So this is also about 6 years ago, and CMU reached out for a speaking opportunity, and speaking opportunity become some of the courses, and then some courses become elective program classes and become required class. So it's basically it's a journey, slowly move my way there. But I just really love teaching, and I think that is something I would do until one day I cannot.
That is awesome. No, like, what an amazing background, right? You're just the Renaissance woman, right? Who has done everything from founding companies to investing in it to now giving back through education and through your fund as well and engaging it. It's just such an awesome honor knowing you. And this is the show about AI, right? So we talk to practitioners, investors, industry leaders on the impact, what they're seeing from their vantage point on AI. And most of our listeners and audience are business executives and folks who are looking to see how does this powerful technology disrupt or help them disrupt their industries, right? So where do you see AI today? AI has been around for a while, but why is it relevant now? And why is it super hot right now?
Yeah, I love this question because I will say 5 years ago, when I invited to all different shows, everyone asked me the question, is it AI real? And then a couple years later, and I asked the question, is AI good or evil? So finally get to the right question now. So how's AI impact not only just the industry, the large company, but impact everyday's life? You mentioned that, I said earlier as well, is that AI has been around since the 50s. The reason that we saw so much acceleration particularly in the last 6 or 7 years, I will say really there are 3 elements. Number one is computing power. For those who have done machine learning model in the past, is that, well, if you're back to early 2000, if you want to run a machine learning model, you probably get the model updated every 3 months, right? It takes a long time. Regardless, search engine model, advertising model, it takes a long time, a lot of money to have it updated. But today, with particularly, I would say, thank for NVIDIA's GPU, it makes it possible. So the computer power is no, I would say, no comparison to what we had 10 years ago. And then number two is the data, right? So this is something that we all know, and the data is the king, where the data come from. But data has been grown exceptional. So one of the basically latest, I would say latest, research shows that the world's data is showing an accelerated annual growth rate of about 66%.
That's crazy.
So 66%. And I think that is probably estimation of what we have, because we're generate data right now, right? But we're in the middle of talk show, and how much video data it is, right? It's huge. We have a cell phone, and we contribute data on a daily basis. And we have many of us have Ring installed in our house, right? So Ring data, there's all different sort of information. So think about IoT, think about your smart cars. Tesla is collecting data all the time. So it's really, I think that's why I said 66% is underestimation of what the growth could be. And then the last one is algorithm, right? So we've seen a lot of algorithm innovations, and then OpenAI is working on this for a long time for NLP, GPT-3, and there are also so many different open sources, and there are also no-code solutions today, right? So I've seen a number of startups that leverage so many different machine learning models out there, and for someone who have no engineering background, they can just annotate images and then create their own machine learning models in a few hours. So that's something that we could not even imagine in the past.
That's so true. No, I think you're spot on, and I almost have this feeling of deja vu, as if I time travel 5 years ago to this moment, heard this from you, and wrote a blog back in 5 years ago when I was. After I spending about 10 to 15 years in large companies, I did my first entrepreneurial venture. At the time, it was an explainability as a service solution. And this was the argument that I was making, saying, everybody's asking about, is AI for real? But the reality is it's about to explode. And if most decisions are going to be made by automated decision systems and algorithms, somebody has to explain it, right? And it led to a different pathway for me and stuff like that. But it's fascinating. You nailed the three reasons why it's a big deal right now: data, cost of computing and computing, availability of computing, and of course the democratization of algorithms and so forth. So where has organizations moved away from, like you said, they 5 years ago they were asking, is AI for real? Now they're saying, how do I actually use this AI? So where is the industry today, right? Are people, outside of the FANG stocks, outside of the big complex organizations that have the resources and the talent and the infrastructure and the data to go make this happen, like Alibaba and Google and Apple and everybody, where do you see what do you see as the adoption of AI in the industry today across industries, companies, organizations?
Yeah, first of all, I think that is the adoption is, I would say, it's not where I hope it could go faster. We can talk about those bottlenecks later, but I think the speed of spreading is actually faster than people thought, right? So as you mentioned, that most people think, okay, AI is only for the enterprise who have the money, have the energy, have the resource to do that. But as computing costs going down, as the data accessibility increase, as the algorithm open source is available for everywhere, you will see more and more easier, faster no-code adoptions in many different places. So one of the small examples here today is that how often you go to a website and just small business, even retail or a specific brand, you can see that need help, text me right now. And then you click on that, that's a text conversation that's run by a bot, right? Have that conversation. So you wouldn't imagine a small, for example, retail store selling diapers and then will have you use of that. But you have that today. You go to restaurants, you're making reservations today. There is a voice recognitions a lot of them are trying to make a resident, to recognize their voice and say yes, right? So they are in all the different places. But if we're going to go to a macro level to look into what are the four industries that currently contributing over 60% or even more of AI enterprise spending, what would you guess? If I'm going to ask you right now.
Yeah, I would say technology, media, financial services, probably manufacturing, and definitely not healthcare.
Okay, actually, interestingly, you are over 50% right.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
so there are retail, financial services,
Yeah.
healthcare,
Wow.
and manufacturing. So those are the four largest ones that currently the highest budget. Actually, healthcare is one of the largest one, surprisingly to a lot of people. The reason that we think healthcare is probably kind of slow is not going to adopt that much because it's really slow, but actually the use cases that they have, some are really high budget, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for example, I just can give you a few examples here because think about clinical trial participation.
Yep.
So one of the largest spending is clinical trial for companies to get FDA approval. And typically, you're going to schedule millions, if not more, for one simple clinical trial, right?
Yep.
So how do you select the candidates, how to screen them, how to organize it? So there are tons of things there. And then there is also drug treatment discovery, which is huge. And then we all probably heard so much about news about imaging diagnosis, right? So you're going to a radiologist today, they can leverage some of the simple algorithm to identify what the problems are. And then there's the clinical workflow. There's patient monitoring.
Yeah.
There's a personalized care. And in particular, something we have not think about is the dosage management, right? So, today you're taking medicine, you look at the bottle, they said infant the size, child the size, adult the size. Are we the same size of the adults? We're not, right? Yeah. And that's number one. And number two is that, there is no consideration of what other medicine you're taking today and how those different elements in the medicine is going to make, in fact, combined, making impact in your body, right? So if you think that through that lens, it's like, it definitely makes a lot of sense, right? So personalized care, personalized dosage. And there's a huge part here that is a crossover of healthcare and fintech, which is insurance, yes. Right? So fraud detection, and also pricing. And so that's something we're probably not too passionate about as a patient, or in the ones who are actively looking for insurance. Is that okay? So the insurance pricing, how is it being priced? For different population. And, when we talk about bias, bias, right, how to price it, this is also the area that we have to look very, very carefully and make sure that we prevent a fair assessment without any kind of discrimination.
No, it's fascinating. Thanks for actually, detailing that out. A couple of observations, and one of the things I'm also going to link it back to what you mentioned on the data growth, right? It's growing at over 60%. The reality is, I think there's two observations there. One is the rate of unstructured data growth, like the videos, like the text, like everything, is about 90% of net new data generated is all unstructured data per one of the 2021 reports that I read. And then second thing on the adoption across industry, to your point, I 100% agree. Healthcare, I think, is the big opportunity for us to really, affect a lot of change. And the true value of AI is about augmenting the human in the picture, right? So it's like, I used to call it, AI should be augmented intelligence, right? In one of my early companies. And the idea is like, how do you actually give the clinician the right tools, give the researcher the right tools to find the needle in the haystack, to be able to process all this explosion of structured and unstructured data to make better decisions. So on the healthcare side, it's an interesting thing that you're talking about, and I believe there is an incentive misalignment issue right now in healthcare. and it's getting resolved, right? If you look at most of the startups as a moniker of innovation happening in healthcare, they're all focused on either revenue cycle management or telemedicine, right? And I'm not saying that others are not doing it. A lot of people start off doing, I'm going to do better clinical decision making, and then very quickly figuring out that incentive alignment is actually on the revenue cycle side, which is great. I mean, so insurance, all of that use cases gets better, but where the real hard problems are and that should be solved are like the ones that you mentioned: drug discovery, personalized medicine. I was talking to someone who leads the personalized medicine practice at one of the largest cancer centers last evenings. And he was telling me how, like, they've done a lot of advances in the genomics work they've done on one end, but then there's all this chart data, patient data, clinical notes, lab reports, imaging, that's all sitting, and all of these are different silos of data that has to be brought together to make better decisions on personalized medicine. So thank you for sharing your incentives there. Let me ask you the flip side of this question, right? What are some of the challenges you still see in organizations that is stopping or slowing down this adoption?
Yeah, so I think we kind of touched on this a little bit, is that when we talk about AI strategy, you need to also have a data strategy, right? So for our industry, we say garbage in, garbage out, is that what kind of an outcome you want the model to provide, you have to provide good training, right? So, so in this case, what is considered good data? And then you also mentioned 90% of data are not usable today, right? So let's look at the data, why the data are not usable today. So first of all, because we all know data is the new gold, right? So all the organizations try to acquire, and kind of store those data. But one of the recent study from IDC and also Seagate, the storage company, and find out in their customers and also in the industry. So about 57 of, well, first of all, about 56 of the data has been touched after they acquire, but 44% of data actually goes, 44% goes uncaptured, and 56 is captured, but not many of them are not used. And then if you do the calculation, total unused and plus uncaptured data is about 68%. And that's just from hardware perspective. Is okay, they're not being used. So even though you call the data, doesn't mean that you are able to make sense of it, right? So go back to our earlier comments about healthcare. So healthcare, one of the reasons that it shows is about 80% to 90% of data are unstructured. Why is unstructured? People try to understand what is structured, what's unstructured. Structured data means that you have a data that with very specific, I say, think about it as all the different tags, very clear, right? Here's the time, here's the content, who's the title, who's the sender, what's the content about it. It's very structured and you can read that data. But unstructured data is a chunk of file. And then you don't know what's inside. You don't know what meant. You have some information about time and size, senders, locations, but the key insight is difficult to get into. So how do you turn unstructured data to structured data? And that is one thing today we call data annotation. Data annotation. What does it mean? It means that you have the data and you kind of try to figure out to label it. And label it, and then from the label, you also annotation the insight and give you the insight, what is this one? So typical example we heard a lot in the computer vision industry is that you give you a lot of pictures, you're trying to annotate which one is cat, which one is dog, right? And then after a while, you train the system and the system knows, okay, now when I see a dog, it's a dog, not a cat. So same thing for images, medical images, right? So you have lung cancer, specific area. So what is it, is the shadow because the lighting or some other different infection, or just really lung cancer is the tumor that we should be concerning. So you need domain expertise to give you that kind of insight, help you to annotate it. But the key issue today is that annotation is in the past, annotation is a really long and boring work. So We did an unofficial research of all the computer science PhDs in data science after their graduation. They went to all different large companies, and we asked them what you've been doing on a daily basis. So for data scientists that get paid somewhere between 250K to 350K today at the package, they spend over 60% of their time drawing box and doing annotation. And number one, is not good use of data science time. Number two, do you think data scientists actually have the domain knowledge, the molecular, or for example, specific damage of a ring for roofing, not going to be happening, right? So that's why there are startup, for example, like Skill AI. Not Skill AI is no longer a startup, but there are smaller startup company, for example, called Lodestar, LODESTAR. And there are, Andreessen also invested in Labelbox. So there are different companies now and try to do this data annotation tools that help domain expert to annotate this data more efficiently.
No, you're spot on. So if I understand this, to summarize, you're saying the challenges of adoption are still broadly, three buckets, right? One is definitely the fact that data, before even having an AI strategy, do you have a really solid data strategy? Do you understand that the quality of the data is right? Do you have access to the right kind of data to make decisions and so forth? The second is the talent, and talent comes from two parts. One is the misalignment of talent. You have data science talent, but they may not have domain expertise. So you need the trifecta of domain expertise and data science to actually go make that. And then lastly, I would actually even say, and you touched upon it early on when you talked about bias, I think trust, right? I think that is still, I don't know whether it's really impeding a lot of growth, but I see examples of my clients where, the ML team, actually the center of excellence for AI in the company, large Fortune 500 company, would turn out an amazing sales tool that actually predicts the probability of close for a sales opportunity on Salesforce, and the sales guys don't use it because they don't trust the algorithm. They think it doesn't really capture the domain knowledge that they have. And this is done in a very different silo. So there is something here in terms of, I think, if you really remove the friction between the science part and the domain expertise part, I think a lot of these problems could be resolved. So
there are also the emotional part of it, right? So for example, now hypothetically that one of your friends got diagnosed with cancer, she or he wants to talk to a doctor, a person,
that's
to
true.
find out what's going on, right? Not just chatbot.
That is so true. No, so this whole thing about, and it's gotten a lot better, right? The primary narrative for AI has been written by Hollywood all over the world, right? And it's gotten a lot better. People are really realizing that it's not Skynet and Ex Machina all over. It's about how do I have the smartest, digital assistant that can help me make better decisions, right? That's the ultimate goal. Let me, in the interest of time, I want to actually touch upon one other topic before we wrap up, right? Which is, now you also founded some nonprofits, and you're also involved with Chinese American entrepreneurship. You have an accelerator and stuff. What is your views on diversity, the need for diversity in AI specifically, and in the industry in general, not just venture capitalism, but also the general startup industry? Just give me your thoughts and what might even be your call to action.
Yeah. So the reason I am, I'm funding different nonprofit and get involved in different nonprofit is because I have this passion, particular on a few things. Education obviously is one. That's why I'm teaching. But the other one is diversity. Diversity, in a way, is that is something close to my heart. Number one is that I'm a woman, so I'm promoting women leadership, particularly these days. I'm promoting women in tech and also women on boards. So I want to see more women, qualified, brilliant women to be on the board of Fortune 500 companies. And
I have a few suggestions for you, by the way. I'll follow up with an email on that, but sure. Go ahead.
So that's number one. And then number two is that I think that different ethnic group, diversity and involvement, this is not only limited to Chinese or to Indian or to, whatever group that we're talking about, as I know you mentioned that as a first generation immigrant, right? So first generation immigrant doesn't mean that we are not part of this country. We're not part of the owners, and then should not have our voice. So that's really important for us.
No, I'm a first generation immigrant myself, and I totally, see that thing. And thank you for your efforts here. This is also a, close and dear topic for me too, in terms of like in my portfolio of companies, my angel investments and stuff. So it's a, it's a, it's an important aspect because it not only is just doing good for the sake of doing good, it is also a powerful performance accelerator, right? Because you're
Yeah.
now the diversity of thought, the diversity of backgrounds really drive better and more impactful innovation for organizations across the globe.
Yeah.
So thanks
Yeah.
for
If I were going to go back to, not talk about, in general, what be fair and not fair, create a more of a, better environment for everyone. But we'll just talk about on the business terms or technical terms.
yes.
Remember we talked about earlier is that garbage in, garbage out, right? So if you're going to train the data, don't you want to have a diversified data that represent different scenario, different use cases, or you
Yep.
only want to train on one use cases that would not apply to all,
That's
right?
so true.
And
Yep.
same thing as if you are a product manager and you want to, let's say if you're a consumer product manager, you want to design a car. And do you want to design a car that only man can drive, that fits that the body build, or you want to design something that different gender and different body build can actually comfortably drive a car, right? So those are the questions.
That's so
And
true.
if you are not in that category, you can try to emphasize empathy, like try to imagine as much as you can. But it would be even better to include to help you make those groups to help you make that decisions, right?
Absolutely. No, it's so true. It's like sitting here and building a restaurant to serve Middle Eastern food and in Iraq. It's just not going to happen. You're in there, you understand it, right? So
Yeah, just like for example, some of the founders will, one of the examples that a group of founders talked to me that they are building an early childhood education product. None of them have kids. None of them have kids. Okay, so where's that? Where? Oh, we talk to people who have kids. Well, but you probably want someone on the team to have that experience.
absolutely. No, you're so it's actually also it tells me the way you look at your investments as a VC too, right? I mean, do founders have unique insight born out of their own personal experiences? And it's very important for, as you said, it needn't be the founder, but you need to have those kind of experiences within the team. The need for
Yeah,
diversity is
yeah.
situated there.
Yeah, I don't have to be a cancer patient to develop medicine for cancer patients, but you want to include that in that kind of opinion and experience very closely
Yeah.
when you trying to identify the pain point and provide solutions. You need to listen really, really well, and you want to have someone on the team that even closer to that. That's even better, right?
That is awesome. Like, this has been fascinating. I got two very rapid fire questions for you. Okay.
Okay.
I ask this to all my guests. Number one, artificial general intelligence, AGI. Do you believe in it? Do you think it's going to happen in our lifetime? Do you fear it?
Oh, okay. So I will say I'll give the same answer of people ask, do you think we're going to live on Mars one day? Right? How close is it?
Yeah. What
And
is
I would
your
just leave
Yeah.
that.
Got it. Got it.
People have a different opinion, right?
Got it.
Yeah.
My second question is there a one powerful personal practice that you employ? I mean, could be anything. Could be a morning
Oh,
walk, could be a workout or meditation, whatever. It's a personal
meditation.
meditation.
Meditation is number one. Yeah.
Got it. That's
So um, I think these days we're not lack of information. We're not lack of network. We're not lack of things to do. But how do you have a quiet mind and pick the right thing that really important, not urgent, not necessarily urgent, but really important. for you to do, and that is also aligned with where your heart is going, right? So what makes you happy in life? Is it for Ganesh, that for you is it doing always explore something new and constant learning journey that make you happy? Or is it something that you feel like you're making a lot of positive impact, right? So what is really close? It can be one or two things, but knowing that will be a compass that direct you to all different directions, and it doesn't create any boundaries for you.
That's amazing. What a great way to end the show. Thank you so much, Lake, for taking the time. This was an absolute blast.
All right. Thank you very much for having me.